guys that flew down for his birthday. We're in this little sushi shop that holds 8 people. And there's people knocking on the window that want to literally like get his autograph. And I'm like, may I rent a friend? And he's like, what? Because I don't like buy into any of this, right?
Yes.
And I'm like looking at it going, why? Like you have glasses, you know, like you're not saving the planet here, you know? Like,
I know.
But
he hit a specific part of it.
But the way he did it made him, you know, I mean, now it's, listen, it's the who's who, you know, it's Lady Gaga, it's Elton John, it's, you know, all the, every show that's in this week, Minaj, all these people, he's at every show with, even wrestling, they call him for glasses and, you know, but every show, you know, so it's kind of cool. And the way that he's a very sharp salesman, very sharp. He's been a sharp salesman since he was like 3. It's just like, some people are just born with this, and some people will never get it no matter what, you know. And when he was a little kid, he was working at in Cavendish Mall. At the time had a kids Gap store and an adult Gap store. He got hired in the adult Gap store, and he used to take people, and while they were looking for stuff, he'd ask them, "You're going to buy something for yourself. You're not going to buy something for your kid." And he hand walk them out of the store, across the aisle, to the other store and nail them for multiple sales, right?
Yes.
And they fired him for it. It's just, there is no way that this kid could ever work for somebody, ever. It just would never happen. It's impossible.
Why is that?
He's just not built that way. He's not, he just has to do things to the tune of his own drummer. It's not possible. He's not able to take advice from one person all the time. He's always challenging what he's been told. He's always looking for a better way to do something. And if you look at his marketing, how he's doing it, I mean, you know, it takes a lot to come out with a different item 3 times a week, you know, and promote it as if it's the item of the year, you know, and to be on 24/7. And I mean, the downside is, how do you sell the company? I think, you know.
Yeah.
It's hard to, I mean, I had that problem with my company. You know, we were doing custom upholstery.
That was Mirage, right?
Beautiful work, incredible work, great clientele, servicing architects and interior designers from Montreal all along the east coast to Florida. And then if you want to sell something, then people go, where's Phillip? Or my wife was involved, where's Lena? You know? And when it came to COVID and we actually wanted to sell, not a chance. I mean, there was no way. Nobody, we couldn't guarantee our employees would stay. Why would they stay? We're leaving, you know? And that's it. So you're a labor business with no chief, you know? And other companies that were competitors of mine that did sell, sold for such a small amount of money that they hated it and they couldn't stay there anyways, and they didn't like the, you know. I was fortunate that I found another company where the people were younger and I just amalgamated with them. I didn't sell them anything. I didn't, and they just produced for me. I put my people there, and I said, you know what, I'll just keep on taking cash flow and I'll be fine, rather than trying to sell to somebody who doesn't know what to do with it anyways. Plus, I didn't think anybody else knew how to make furniture. I thought only us. You know, we were doing like really, really fine work.
Was that the creative part, or was beside the business part?
No, it started off that I was in the clothing business. For my dad was in the clothing business. I grew up learning how to make sweaters. That's what his business was. As a matter of fact, where we are at Don Park, there's a machine downstairs, a circular machine near the elevator that nobody knows anything about. That's the first machine I ever learned how to work on.
Okay.
It's a t-shirt knitting machine.
Okay.
Anyway, so I grew up doing that. I had a father who had a huge company, powerhouse, and the problem with that was in women's wear, which is what I grew up in. I might as well have walked around with a placard of his face. I was always so-and-so's son. I had no identification, and I couldn't stand it. So I got out of that, and I went into menswear and found out that I didn't really know what I was doing. but people would give me a chance to learn because of my association through my father. They think, well, if he knows what he's doing, this kid must, but it wasn't the case. I really wasn't. I had learned quick, but I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And so through trial and error, I learned more and more and more and more, and then I got out of the manufacturing and I got into the retail end with some people, and we had a chain of menswear stores, like 34 stores, and became #1 in young men's retailing in the province of Quebec.
What were the name of the stores?
A Boutique Mustache.
Boutique Mustache?
Yes, that one was on Sherbrooke. Or where was it?
We had 34 of them. They were all over the place. They were in every mall. They were.
Yeah, because I've heard it before, yes.
Yeah, so we, it was like today it's Ernest and Tristan and those guys. That's who the competition was. And so we did that, and then I got out of that, and I went to work for some other people that heard that I was pretty decent at styling lines, and so I did that, and then I hated it, so I stopped. And my girlfriend at the time worked at a huge hair salon in Laval, and became a partner there, and it was huge. I mean, it was. I think it was 38 or 40 full-time hairdressers, machine. And she wasn't happy doing it, and I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And I said, you know what, I want to find something new to do. And so she said to me, I'll tell you what, I don't know how long you think it's going to take you, but I'll back us for 4 years.
Okay.
Go do it at your own leisure. Anyways, almost 4 years on the dot. That's when I found the place that I wanted to do. And it was just, I walked into this furniture shop that my kid sister had introduced me to, saying, you know, fabric, you know, manufacturing, what's the difference if it's this or... And she was right, and I liked the wood floors. And so I said, let's do it. Let me try this. And I knew a lot of people in town. So it was easy to kind of call people and say, do you know any designers? You can introduce me, this and that. And what I didn't really know is I didn't know much about the quality of anything. Because in furniture, or especially upholstery furniture, the most important part of the quality is the interior, because that's the foundation. But I knew nothing about foundation. I could tell you on the outside whether it was sewn right. Anyways, learned quick, and started building this company, and built it up to what I think is we were the best custom-made furniture company in Montreal. And on June 4th this year, it'll turn 30 years. And I had never done anything for 30 years. Like, I don't even want to do something for 30 years, you know? So I'm actually holding on so that I can just drop the mic on the 30th and get out, you know? Yeah. So we built this thing. We was very proud of the artisans we put together. They were an unbelievable team. And so my wife got rid of her hair salon, and after 2 hours of not working for the first time in her life, said to me, hey, you think I can come and hang out? Because we lived upstairs from the shop, and so she called downstairs, and she said, I'll come down. And I think since 10 minutes after she walked in, I've worked for her. She's just the most organized person I've ever met in my life. And detail-oriented. So between my eye for clothing, her eye for hair design, and the fact that neither one of us worked on the floor, it gave us an advantage that nobody else had. And when we talked to designers, we had a similar, we were coming from a similar approach to them. Whereas when they were going to other furniture makers, it was some guy from Europe or something that was on a bench that had, but he didn't really know, he knew how to do it, but he didn't have any taste. And that's, you know, so that's how we did it. You know, we would tweak the designs that designers gave us until they were to our liking and our specs, because they didn't have the eye for it the same way as we did. No matter how skilled they thought they were. We always found that there was something we were catching. We didn't necessarily tell them, but we tweaked it. And, yeah. And so we had an impeccable, we never got one return in 30 years. So.
And you're still involved after the allegation?
Yeah. What I do now is I work part-time. So if people call me because I have a website, but it's not a commercial, it's not a commerce website, it's just an info website. So if you look up a custom upholsterers, my name of my company will come up, and somebody calls me and says, can you do this? Why not? Like, okay. So I call the company that's producing for me, and I go, you want to make this? And they go, yeah, how much? And they tell me. And I have some of my people there, so I can follow the progress of the quality. And that's it. So, and I get people who have dealt with my company and the company where I'm producing, and they've said to me, like, why should we buy it through you? You know, because they know I'm not doing it for free. Yeah. So I go, well, because I watch it. Yeah. So I just had a situation where somebody called me and said, how come it's so different when you're not there? I said, not even going to answer the question. They went, why? I said, because it just is. And if you want it not to be, this is how much it costs. And if you don't care, then this is how much it costs. You said that you were going to watch it. You didn't watch it. You don't know how to watch it. So, I don't know. That's...
So you work part-time, so any other projects on the horizon?
Yeah, I'm trying to start these websites, I guess they are. Different generation from the digital. But I have three companies names that I can use, and I'm trying to do some sort of political satire on what's happening in Quebec and Canada and Montreal. So I own franglais.mtl.com. Mm-hmm. I own Quebec Qua QUI, and I own, what's the other one? Something pas.
Je me souviens.
Yeah. Oh yeah, je me souviens.com. Okay. Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah.
Huh?
So, and the thing is that I have never done this before, so I'm trying to get up and allocate a certain amount of time in the morning to go through the news, jot all this type of stuff down, and then write something that I find is somewhat humorous or just real. Having grown up in here and lived here through all this political crap, and now where I don't have a downside, like it's not like somebody you're going to look at me and say, well, I don't like your political views, I'm not going to do business with you. I don't even give a shit anymore, I don't have that kind of life where I'm dependent on that kind of income, so I really don't care. So now I can just write my point of view based on what's going on in the province.
But your creative approach is a comical one.
I'm hoping. It's not always.
No. It's a fine line.
Sometimes it's just blatantly offensive, and I don't know it.
And there's other people that are doing similar things. But even locally, what's her name? What is her name? She once a week she has a newsletter that she sends to people, and she switched from being extremely funny to almost to the flip side, and now she's extremely critical on everyone. I
wanted to do it in another. I had this idea that there's like, especially for the Quebecois one, I always wanted to have a little booth that surrounded somebody on three, so an open face box. Yeah. And you ask the person a question. Mm-hmm. In my case, I'm looking for political people. And when they deviate from the answer, you just smack them. Just smack them.
You think they'll agree to that?
Well, no, I don't think they're going to agree to it. But I think you could do it like like almost in an AI thing,
Yeah, Yeah.
And like they do this French political clac-à-clac.
Tata-clac?
This is filmed in my building.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah. So I see what they're doing. I don't necessarily understand all the French things that they're doing, but I see that they're getting their point across and they have their audience, and it's cool. My thing is that I just find that the whole political thing in Quebec is just a giant bullshit lie. It's just a bunch of guys that have no skill whatsoever, that have figured out how to do this to people. Hey, if you cross over this line, nobody will speak your language. It's just it's a fictional bunch of crap. And so many of Quebecers seem to be influenced by this that it just boggles my mind. So I can't think of anything other to do than make fun of it, make light of it. Mm-hmm. Because it's so sad that it can be done that I've always thought the Quebec politics, the only reason for them is to control the price of real estate. You know, because you watch if the PQ decides that they're going to take over the CAC, which it looks like, and they're already saying they're going to run a referendum, well, what do you think is going to happen to real estate? But they know that too. So I always wanted to see the politicians, what they bought and sold during their tenure, you know? I'm just curious, because I can't think of any other reason to keep everybody down like this.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. The people that left Quebec in 76 flourish in Ontario. I mean, Toronto is Toronto because of that. Toronto was nothing, you know? It was like a hick town compared to Montreal. Now, all of a sudden, you know, it's the second New York. So Montreal is hurt for that. It's like I live in a place where I'm handcuffed by language, which is the dumbest thing in the world. You know, if you go to the States, anywhere in the States, and you want to open an all-French store, nobody cares. Nobody cares.
You'll probably be sophisticated.
They may not buy from you.
Yes, that's another
But
thing.
that's their choice. They're a consumer. Just like if you open an all-Anglo store anywhere in Quebec, you deserve not to be supported by the French community. If you're not going to speak to somebody in their language, why should they buy from you? There's a million places to buy. But what I really find like insulting to French Quebecers is that the government they voted for has decided that they're too stupid to understand what's in a box store without having a list of stuff on the sign outside. No, you're going to see a parking lot for a Home Depot. You're going to see all these cars. If you stop for 2 seconds in your van with your family, you're going to see people coming out with wood, this and that. But you're not going to go in because it doesn't say it outside. You're retarded. You're just retarded. You shouldn't be allowed in the frickin' store. Like, what is
Not
that?
touch
You know?
the tools.
You can't be near tools. If
Yeah,
that's the
exactly,
case, you know?
yes.
So I don't understand it. I don't understand why people aren't insulted by that. You know? How is it, you know, and then if you do use, here's the thing. So I grew up in Montreal, and in elementary school in grade 3, they start teaching kids French.
Yes.
So there's a kid, now I live in a pretty English neighborhood as a kid, but there's a couple of French kids, and I want to talk to them, you know? And I go, comment vous appelez-vous? And they're like, what? I go, comment vous appelez-vous? And they're like, the fuck is that, you know? So I'm learning Parisian French in the back alleys of Quebec's, like it doesn't make sense. So the other thing I've never understood is if you're going to promote a language, then promote the language you speak. Don't promote a language you don't speak, because you don't speak real French. No. You speak Quebecois French.
Well, actually, that's starting to change now because all of this is actually attracting a lot of immigrants from France. So,
well, a few things. Not only that, the fact that versus France, our real estate's cheap, so they can actually buy
that's
something.
true. And they make a lot more money here too.
Yeah, and they have more
turns out.
freedom to move around. But it's like this giant lie and a cloud that hangs over us, and every time you don't get your way, you go, I didn't get my way, so I'm French-Canadian, and I'm a politician here, and I represent all these people outside of Montreal, because you don't represent fucking anybody in Montreal, and we want this, or we're going to do that. Me personally, I think the rest of Canada should vote us out.
Yes, that's what I
They
agree
should
with.
just
So,
go, you know what? It's enough. Have a great day. Do whatever it is you want to do. But this is the terms of the split. And great, get the hell off of my back already. Do what it is you do. Yeah. You know, but part of the big lie is that, unfortunately, Quebec lies in Canada, which lies between Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, which means there's a free trade agreement, which means you got to reopen this can of worms, and you don't have the power to anymore. You know? And if you think the power is in your electricity, I think the power is in their military. Because when they start running out of electricity, they'll just come and take the electricity. That's the way it goes, you know? They're not going to negotiate with you because, you know, when they want the electric, if they need the electric, they're getting the electric, and have a great day.
Well, them and every other nation, essentially.
Yeah, so like, you
they'll
know,
put a cable to New York. Vermont or something. Yeah.
So I don't know. It's like this whole big hidden, nobody ever brings up the fact that that Canada sends Quebec a lot more money than Quebec sends Canada.
Equalization payments.
None of the Quebec politicians bring up any of that ever. Oh, we can do it on our own. You can't even tell what's in a store unless they tell you outside what's in it. How can you do it on your own? We have an education minister who doesn't even freaking carry a laptop or an iPad or a phone. He's got all these papers. So every time he has a press conference, as you're asking him stuff, he's doing this. And I'm looking at him going, why don't you just get your iPad and find out where the answer is that you're looking for? Like, oh, I don't want to wait for your time here to do this. And you're the education minister. And 2 weeks before our schools start, you tell us we're like 8,000 teachers short. 2 weeks before. You're fired. You couldn't work for somebody. You couldn't work at anybody's company that has that quantity of employees, and you tell your boss,
incompetence.
Look, I'm responsible for this division. Unfortunately, we're 8,000 teachers short. So I have this idea. I'm going to do a press conference, and I'll talk to them, and I'll tell them, listen, we really think that you should take a new look at your retirement. We need you. Come out of retirement and help us out. And if you can't get you guys, then I want to talk to you people. You people are university graduates who perhaps never studied in educating people, but we could use you guys. And if you guys don't want to come, then we'd like to talk to you guys. Anyone that's 18 or over. And what are your skill set? I'm 18 and over. And you're going to let these people sit with your kids and do what? Like, do what? Like, and if you're going to entice a person to come out of retirement, it would be a good idea to get them something that entices. Like, I know you're going to pay them, but if you take their pay and now you add it to their retirement pension, then they're in a higher tax bracket than they were before, and it doesn't pay them to go to work. So what are you doing? But that's okay because you just gave yourself a 30% increase in your salary. For what? And when I ask you that question, because you're the education minister, your answer is, why do you think that teachers have the same importance as politicians? And I'm like, what? You have no importance. Teachers are going to teach your kids how to read, how to know what the store is, or have the curiosity to look without having a whole list of the inventory outside. It's just, come on, So everything here is just.
So this is what's going to be the main content.
Well, it's going to be part of it, yeah, and part of it's going to be the comparison of, you say that French people from France like to come here. That's true, and Quebec's government likes them to come here because they speak French, but they don't like them.
Yeah, that's probably.
And why don't they like them?
Yeah.
Because they speak French like snobs. That's why.
Yeah.
That's why. If you put someone from France here and someone from Quebec here and just put butter on the table, just say, what is that? One's going to bell, and the other's going to bet, And right away, they're going to look at each other like, oh, you snob. Oh, you're my poor cousin from Arkansas. It's like, that's what it is. So I've always thought, we speak Quebecois. Why aren't we proud of it? Why don't we stand on a soapbox and say, this is the language that we speak. It's our dialect. There's nothing wrong with it. We all understand it. This is what we'd like you to come here and speak. This is what we'd like to promote. But we don't. We're like this fake promotion, It's
doesn't sell.
and then you go and you say, okay, we really need French immigrants. So you go and you bring them from anywhere.
Yeah, and it's not just from French
now
from
they're
France.
coming
It's even from like Islamic countries and everything. As long as you speak
You're
French,
going to now put out
essentially, yeah.
Islamic mortgages, halal mortgages.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. You came to my country. You're more than welcome to be here. But this is how my country functions. Because if I go to your country,
You'll have to adapt
I
there.
have to adapt to you. So what's so different, And so I don't know. It's just very the English and French get along fine. They get along fine.
In reality, yeah.
In reality, we get along absolutely fine.
Yeah, it's the
I don't know
politicians.
any Anglos anymore that go to a store and somebody says something to them in French and they don't try to speak French to them. I don't know anybody.
Not anymore.
And maybe you don't speak well, But you just have to try, and everybody will work it out. You know, I'm at the Atwater Market every day, and now there's people that point and go, oh, the franglais guy, you know.
Oh yeah, it's starting to.
Are
have
you
a
already gaining the notoriety?
Well, because I know all the vendors. I cook a lot, and so I go there, and that's a great ground for me to test it. You know, and the bonjour hi. Like, how offended could you be? Like, what planet are you from that could offend you? For somebody, like, and then French Canadians get offended because I have a cure for the problem on how to protect the French. It's a very simple one. It's called fucking. If you don't fuck and produce children, then fuck your language. It's going to disappear. It'll be like Latin. Like, what are you talking about, you know? So get in there. Shake it up like when the church used to make you shake it up, because now you hate the church, and so you hate having kids because it's responsibility and all this stuff. But you're bringing in all these Muslim families who they understand it as well as the Hasidic Jews understand it. You want to protect your thing, start pumping it, you know. But they don't, and so they look elsewhere for people that they don't really want to be here.
And they want them to assimilate.
They don't really want them to come here. That's not the natural Quebecois. Is not this. Oh, you're different. Come to me. No, it's not like that at all. And I don't know if it is anywhere in the world, but you know,
it's changing. It's very tribal if you think about it.
Completely. But you know, it's the birth rate's down. So if the birth rate's down, you can talk about protecting any language you want. But eventually, numbers just fall by the wayside. So why aren't you doing something about it?
Well, then on top of that, you have taxpayers.
And imagine T-shirts that just say "fuck you." You know, and it would be, what do you mean? Well, you'll have more kids, you know, and it's bilingual. It's even.
Well, then you don't have taxpayers in 20 years either, right?
Well,
that's another problem.
It's going to be a problem. Yeah.
It's you're with what 8 million people, 7 million people.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the current healthcare system is not supporting more children either.
And the more that you allow privatization from doctors individually, the less your healthcare system actually functions. Because why should they work for you in that way? There's a problem. You know, it's Canada says a productivity problem. That's part of it. You know.
I think they know that's probably why they're taking these initiatives, so to speak, you know, to bring in people from everywhere, because they know there's going to be a population shortage in Quebec, and they know there's going to be no taxpayers.
But do they really want that shift in ideology of what's coming here? That's the other thing. Because in reality, no, they've told you no. They've told you, no, we don't want you wearing your religious garbs in schools or hospitals or all this, unless, of course, you get hit by a car. The only other person that could save you is some guy with a turban, and you go, okay, you know? Because what's the difference what he's wearing, right? I mean, to me anyways.
Yeah.
I've spoken to several people on either side of that fence, and I think the one interesting argument I heard with anyone who's not pure land French is that their insecurities about language and culture that they want to maintain. So it's almost like a cramp. It's solely based in insecurity. And if Canada was a classroom and Quebec was one of those children in the classroom, that would be the child constantly running to the teacher, asking for extra attention, wants to be the teacher's pet. The direction of the school will constantly say, no, that's a special child. And if you remember how that went in elementary, that child would be picked on by the rest.
Yeah. No matter how screwy I think it is here, I still couldn't live anywhere else in Canada.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, here's my thing. Montreal, Toronto. Toronto, it's, Montreal, thank God it's Friday. Toronto, thank God it's Monday. So right away, there's a different mentality that I don't want to be part of, you know? It used to be that when you walked in Toronto along the streets, if you put your hand out, the traffic would stop. And I used to laugh that in Quebec, if you did that, they'd take your arm.
Yeah, your watch.
Yeah, open game on your arm. Grab the guy. There's the. I've been across the country. We have a beautiful country. I don't know. It's like It's like dull. It's just. I don't know how else to say it. I find it dull. I find that the politics in Quebec and the language thing
Keep things a little bit.
happening,
Yeah.
you know? So that part I like. And the fact that I'm not affected by it, I'm a bystander, it's cool. You know, I don't mind watching it and commenting on it. But there's a certain thing about living with people who have a French culture and that's different than Anglo culture, and I like it.
Well, if you look at the rest of Canada and you compare it to the other English world, which is mostly British anyway, you can see a certain compliance level, almost a Victorian level of behavior in there, and it's very different.
Yeah. So I like this. I had a choice in life to live wherever I wanted, and I always ended up in Montreal. Always. I did a lot of business in LA and a lot of business in New York, and my dad lived in LA, so I could have gone there in a second, but I've never said, I've gotten close to, hey, it's a lot of fun, but that's it. It's a lot of fun, and then what about living there? I don't know. Mm-hmm. So Americans have their thing, and Canadians outside of Quebec have their thing. Quebec's just different. Just a little different. Yeah, it's just different. It's much more liberal. Mm-hmm. Always has been. I don't know. I always, personally always thought that it's the French-English blend that has made it what it is.
I think it also attracted a whole bunch of other cultures and nations and people from other countries.
Yeah, and even the art scene, the music scene. We have a different. Look at the Quebec star system. It's an amazing movement. I mean, to be able to make a star from within your community that really only appeals to your province, and have them have a freaking great life, making a shitload of money and doing, like, it's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. And even
It's
their
amazing.
TV shows that come out of Quebec and stuff,
It's amazing. And what's really amazing is how separate it is. There was a big deal about some newscaster recently. My neighbor, Sonia, sent me this. Let me just look for 1 second so I know. And unfortunately, I didn't even know who the guy was. And there was this big thing, and I said, I'm kind of embarrassed. I don't really know who you're talking about. And she goes, no, he's a big entertainer in Montreal. No.
Well, they have a similar system I've seen in other countries, and there's different scales to it. But even France has a lot of, within its borders, has almost its own ecosystem of celebrity. Germany has it as well, sure. And a lot of
India too, actually, with
Hollywood. Yeah, so here and there it spills over internationally or to other countries, but mostly it's very much its own ecosystem. Yep. And for a relatively small province nation of Quebec, where you have 6-7 million people, that is still
of
quite...
which they're not all the same language. So
yeah.
Cut that off.
Yeah. If you start narrowing that down, it's actually it's almost a miracle that works here with that much talent.
Many years ago, in the early 70s, there was a band, there were two bands that I loved that were French-Canadian bands. One was Harmonium, and the other one was is it Beau Dommage? Anyways, it was silver moment. And so I was tiptoeing into the music business through manufacturing T-shirts for rock bands and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. And I had a connection in LA, and I kept telling him about this band, Harmonium, and I said, this band is as good any day as your Eagles. Mm-hmm. Just if they'd only do one song in English. And so I went and I had a meeting with them through their management, and I said, what? One English recording, give it to me. I'll bring it to LA, play it for this guy. See what happens. And they went, no, it's not what we do. I went, okay.
Yeah.
Why? We had this rap show that we were doing, and I used to ask these guys the same thing. Like they were all from, it seemed like rappers from RDP, Quebec. You know, small market. And I go, can I ask you something? Yeah. You keep complaining. All of you have one thing in common. You complain that there's a very limited market, yeah. And yet you watch all this rap and hip hop that's excelling in the US, yeah. You know, it's a 65, 70-minute drive, right? Like, why don't you go there and do one in English? Oh, well, it's not exactly what we do. I said, you're afraid of your own skill. Like, either jump in with the big boys and do it, or shut up and stop complaining about it, you know? Like,
So what did you do with the merchandise business for musicians?
It was a short-lived thing, but basically I was in business here. It didn't work out for me, and I went to see my father called me and said, are you feeling low? Things didn't work out, you know. Why don't you come visit me at the beach in LA? I said, yeah, okay, fine. So I hopped on it. He sent me this ticket to fly from Montreal to Toronto, LA. And when I got to the airport, they made an announcement saying they were overbooked. If there's anybody that's not in a massive rush, I went. I said, what's the deal? Yeah. And they said, well, we'll give you Montreal, New York, and then New York, LA first class. And I said, okay, can I get LA back to New York first class also? Yeah. I said, okay, I'm in, no problem. And on the flight from New York to LA, I met this guy who was the founder of a company called Great Southern Productions out of Macon, Georgia. And he was a friend of the Allman Brothers, but he didn't play music. And he made them a t-shirt for one of their first shows ever. And from there, his business started snowballing. He became a huge producer of rock and roll t-shirts and handled all of the merchandising and setups for their shows. So he became a touring company, and his bands that he included were Bon Jovi, In Excess, Motley Crue, Iron Maiden, Sade, U2, Clapton, a whole bunch. It was like 40 bands. And so we're sitting on this flight, and he's talking to me, and he goes, what are you doing? And I tell him. He goes, so you know clothing? I go, yeah. He goes, look, I'm dying to meet somebody who knows clothing. I don't know much about it. I know t-shirts, but I have this other thing I want to do. Are you interested? I said, interested in what? He said, well, you may not like it because you'll land in LA and then you'd probably have to take a flight to Toronto right away because we're doing a show tomorrow night in Toronto for Sade. And then she goes Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Quebec City. And that would give you an idea of what we do and, you know, hands-on. You could travel with and see the whole thing. I said, why? So you could take over Canada, you know. I don't have time for Canada. I said, okay. So I went and we struck a deal and I ended up handling this thing. And then we did this t-shirt for U2 Rattle and Hum for the movie. And so we did that promo and then he started sending me t-shirts with movies on them. He said, I have these things, these properties, and I don't know what to do with them. So I said, well, I have an idea. I went to see Famous Players Theaters in Toronto, and I said, imagine if your kids went to see a movie like, I don't know, Roger Rabbit, and on the way out of the theater, there was a kiosk with all of this paraphernalia that they could buy there and then. They don't have to wait to go to a department store. It's right there and then. What do you think? They went, I don't know. I said, I'll set one up next week in your place as a test. So after one night, we went countrywide. And I didn't know that they're owned by Paramount. And so they had all their theaters, the Man theaters and things. So it started expanding, and we started getting more properties. And it was the time of Platoon and Dirty Dancing and all this type of stuff. But after you do these things, you have excess merchandise. What are you going to do with this? Where do you get rid of it? So I went to the video store people at the Astro Bellevue, and I said, look, I have all this stuff. It hasn't hit your stores yet, but in about a week or two, you're going to start getting these movies, and now you can start selling T-shirts to go with it because you don't sell anything else. So they tried it. It went really, really well. And they did that. And then I went to the best move I had was I went to HMV, and they were in the midst of transferring their stores from LPs to cassettes and DVDs. But they still had all their point of sale racks. So I went to this guy and I said, could you take this T-shirt? I gave him an album and I said, fold it and package it this size. He said, yeah, sure. So he did. So I went to their store and their executives came and I went, plop. And they went, what? What do you mean what? Look. Look at what? Do you have anybody here that really understands anything? I said, you own these racks. You don't no longer have to take them out. And here's stuff that I could fill them with that you'll sell in a second. Why wouldn't people buy rock T-shirts, you know? And
so basically, you're the reason why there's merch in HMV.
No, I'm not the reason. No, I was part of it. We had other people with me, but I'm just saying that was the beginning of that movement of that stuff, and it was just a great success. Yeah, that went really well. And then a company came and bought us out called Labatt.
Yes.
And a company called Brockham. Yeah. That was their tour company.
So how do you get yourself into these situations? Like, is it just faith, luck, networking?
I'll do my father's best thing. He left the house. What? He went out that day. You don't do anything sitting in the house, right? You're not going to meet people. You're not going to have anyone to talk to. So we were, you're tuned when you grow up, I think, by who you grew up with and the surroundings of that.
You're tuned?
Yeah, you're tuned.
Like a piano.
Yeah. Kind of, yeah. I mean, if you grow up in a house where everybody is fashion conscious, it's just you're gonna be fashion conscious. You may not be into it, but you'll know the difference from one to another based on what that is. If you go into a house filled with chefs, you're gonna understand, about food, and it all depends. You grow up with a father who's a mortician. Hey.
These are things that happen outside of the place you grew up.
Yeah, but it's also the timing of it, the generation of it, the way to do business. There was none of this. I keep telling my son this. He says, well, I built this business in this many years, and we're doing this. I go, yeah, except that you can do it all from here. No. If I wanted to sell a sweater to someone in Vancouver, I had to get on a fucking plane and go to Vancouver. So it was the cost of the plane, the time of doing it, and the hotel and all this type, and the meals, the whole up to sell them this sweater. Completely different, If you want to make 500 different lens colors on a sheet, you could adjust that whole thing with a computer. You don't have to actually make the lenses. But if I wanted to do 500 colors of sweaters, I had to knit 500 colors of sweaters. There was nothing I could do. There was no computer. For sure. There was no computer. There was no cell phone. There was no fax machine.
Well, even the fax machine, when it came out, it wasn't perfect either.
No, but before that, it was the telex machine.
Oh, yes. Yes, I remember.
This ticker tape thing. Yes.
But you're saying that all of this wouldn't work nowadays? All of these methods that you...
You asked me something about promotion, and I said...
Yeah, way back then, yeah.
Not that far. You asked me, and I said, get off your ass and go knock on the guy's door and introduce yourself. Right. Don't send them this frickin'... I get these letters all the time that hey, Phil, I'm your buddy on LinkedIn. No, you're not. And don't hey, Phil me. I'm not from that generation where you're going to send me a phone.
Did it go to school with you? Yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't know you. I don't know any of this, So, why are you hitting me up like this? So I much preferred if somebody knocks on my door and walks in today's world and says, this is what I do.
So it's still relevant. Very much relevant.
I think it always is because the human touch, and I think that's what's missing in a lot of relationships,
So what are the 3 lessons learned as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a creative?
Rich parents? No.
That's a good start.
It's not bad, yeah.
Okay, but the one you just mentioned is a general rule, which is just showing up.
I have this general theory on life. It's really simple. Mm-hmm. If you think you can, you will. Mm-hmm. If you think you can't, you won't. But either way, you're probably right.
Yeah. That's a good one.
You know, and really that's to me what it's about. If you're the type of person that has this and you want to sell it to somebody and they say no, so then what? Is that it? Or are you the type that's got another way of saying, but what if some people just walk in and they show you this thing? Or here's one that I like the best. When somebody comes in and they have a briefcase and it's full of items that they sell, samples, and would you have some time for me to show you what I do? I say, sure, lay it out. And I go, hey, that's nice. How much is that? And they write it down on a piece of paper. I'll get back to you in a few minutes. I'll call the office. I said, when you go to call the office, yes, leave. What? If you don't know what it is you're selling me, I don't really have the patience to sit around and wait for you. You should know that, you know? So I have no patience for people that pretend to do their job. So there's people that go out and get jobs as salespeople that have no right to be one, and others that do. You know, it's I wouldn't make a good accountant. I wouldn't know how to sit there all day at a desk and do
So
that.
what you're basically saying is the competence comes also from a part of talent, not necessarily nurtured, but it's by nature that it's already there.
Well, I think if you're asking on an entrepreneur basis, I think that one of the things that makes an entrepreneur successful or not successful is their love for whatever it is they're doing. That can get you going a lot of places, you know? I was a very cocky kid, so I really blew a lot of money one year on a business venture because I had been reading books on entrepreneurs. And the only thing that I got out of it, being the skeptical kind of person I was that all these entrepreneurs were successful, but only after they had begged, borrowed, and stole their last penny. They were all up against the wall, and then things started working. So I went into this other business, which I'd prefer. And I just said, you know, I'm reading all this stuff. Let's just put it in now and go up against the wall and see what happens. Which was just like freaking like a moron, you know? And I lost it all. It was a really good lesson. You know, I got to see my father come over and go, hey, that was really cool. How'd you do that one? Got to do that again, you know? Because he'd come in and like hammer me. And so it's not necessary. You need a passion for what it is you're doing, and you need to be the type of person that wants to capitalize on that passion.
Those are the two ingredients.
I think it's got a
essentially.
lot to do with upbringing, like the type of place you grow up in and your surroundings, which is what I think attracts some kids to become doctors or lawyers or accountants, you know? None of which could I ever partake in.
Well, the best teachers and the best doctors I've ever met, it was innately in them already. They had a social skill, they had rapport building skills with other people.
Not only that, I think when you're a kid, like I have a guy who I was never really friendly with as a kid, but we started off in kindergarten together, and so I see him on Facebook, and now he's a semi-retired professor who specializes in Java. Travels all over the world giving. I could have told you when I met him that he would do that, something of that nature, because some kids are just attracted to science. I'm not. Like, hey, thank God I know calculus. You know, man, when am I gonna ever use this ever? You know, so I'm not attracted to any of that. I'm attracted to social irrelevant things. You know, frivolous things that make you want to spend money to have. That's what I'm attracted to. Okay? Other people are attracted to saving the world. I wouldn't know how to save the world, you know? It's just that some people, when you grow up with them, you know, they go off into different groups. You know, some are entrepreneurial, some are just like science freaks, some are sports freaks, some are movie, whatever, literature. But you can kind of feel it. You can kind of see what attracts them. But schools try and take that away and put you all into this thing.
Speaking of which, you want to tell us the story of your experience with school?
With whom?
Well, you know, the story that when you got
Kicked
got the
out.
boot.
I was in high school I was in grade 10, and I was a newspaper editor guy. And so I was putting out this newspaper, and they called me from the school, and they said, we just want to warn you that you've been absent many, many, many days this year, and we're really not happy with that. I said, yeah, okay, fine. And in those days, the high school went as far as grade 11, and then it was just starting C-Shop. So I had one more year. So I said, well, okay. They said, well, if we're not happy with the way the rest of your years goes, we're going to ask you to leave and not come back to finish your last year here. And I'm like, okay, that's great. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Well, if you're in grade 10 and you have any interest in being, let's say, student council president, you run in grade 10 and do the job in grade 11.
Okay.
So I'm like, I don't know, how can I stay in this school? I don't know. I'm going to run for student council president, see what happens. So I do, and we have a lot of Greek people, a lot of Asian people, and I get people to make signs that I have no idea what they say. There's just Greek signs, just, you know, I'm with you, I'm a politician. And I get up, and there's 3 of us running for this office, and the first 2 are very conservative, and they're going to change the way things are, and they think that there's too much dope selling, too much this, too much. And my speech is I'm the last guy, and I go, you know, I think we should pool our money together as a student group and get better rates on the dope we're buying. We could buy volume and spread it out amongst us, you know, and it'd be a much better thing.
Yes.
Boom, I'm the winner.
Yes.
I win. I win. And these guys call me in the middle of the summer, and they go, we want to have a talk with you. I say, sure. They go, well, you know, you were absent so many days and things didn't work. We don't think it's right. I said, but I passed. They said, yeah, maybe you're just too intelligent for our system. I went, nice approach. I said, maybe not. You know, they said, well, we don't want you to come back. I said, what? I said, what about the president thing? We don't care about that. You're not coming back. So now I have to go home and deal with my family, right? And I'm freaking out. Like, how am I going to tell my father? I'm like, I come home and I've got this plan in my head how to do it. And my father comes in and says, family meeting. I go, what? He goes, family meeting. Come, we're going to have a family meeting. I figure he knows. But he doesn't know. He comes in and he says, I sold my company today. I go, yeah? I'm opening a new one tomorrow, yeah? You don't really take school serious as far as I'm concerned. Would you like to be in that business? Because if you'd like to be in that business, you have to join me tomorrow, or there'll never be an opening for you ever again. I'll fill it with the proper people.
You're on board.
So I went,
Yes.
okay, right? And I had never had to tell anybody, right? Except being a bit of a cocky kid. Now I'm working in this knitting mill that we built, and we don't build small, it's a big knitting. And I hear that at the time the principals of the Provincial School Board were having problems with their contracts. And so I make an appointment to see the old principal and vice principal. Now I have a business card. And they go, what do you want? I said, I wanted to thank you for throwing me out of your school. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. You guys were right. And with your intelligence level, I wanted to give you both my business card and tell you if you're having a problem with your negotiations and you're looking for something else, you'd probably be able to handle the yarn inventory at my place and stuff like that. You're probably good with numbers and maybe even colors and shapes, you know? And they went, what? And they were like freaking out, you know? And I went, I just wanted to tell you, you know, there may be an opportunity, and give me a call, right? Yeah, anyway, so that went
cool
well.
for school.
Yeah. And then I found out there's a social problem when you don't go back to school. Your friends are still in school. You don't want it to get around that you got booted out. There's a social thing. And they're socializing, you're not. You're doing something else. So how do I get my foot into this thing? Well, it turns out if you go to a CEGEP and you find any 4 courses that can be combined during a semester, and you're 17 years old, you can become a mature student.
Yes.
Once you have your foot in the door as a mature student, which now gives you an ID to get into every beer place that your friends are going to, you can now go with that one and go to another CEGEP, like it was Sir George Williams, and get another course there where they're going to give you a card. And you could go to McGill and get one course there, and they'll give you a card. And all I wanted was the cards. So I didn't feel like a social midget amongst my friends while I was earning money doing stuff, and they weren't, you know? And I realized that the formalization, the formal business that was out there just wasn't somewhere I could fit in. Hence my son, I suppose. Yeah, I just didn't fit into it. I just never, what else could I do? What do you mean? How come you're there and I'm here, you know? I always want to be there. So.
How did you get there and how did that?
Well, the only way you can get there, I found out, was just get off and do it. Try it. And see what happens. And so my son went to LaSalle College, and for some reason he picked up this saying that I guess, said quite a few times, which those who can do, those who can't teach. So he had T-shirts made so he could wear them during a presentation there, where they threw him out of the school.
Oh, yeah.
And then a few years later hired him to do entrepreneurial pep talks to the school. And so yeah, he likes the fight also. I like when somebody says you can't do it. You can't do that. Doesn't mean I can't do that, you know?